Hello and welcome to ScotDance USA's World Champion Dancers and Teachers interview series. I'm Emma Schiff. The Professional Development Committee at ScotDance USA wants to help the Highland dancing world stay motivated during these challenging times. That's why we're talking to the best of the best, World Champion dancers and their teachers. We'll learn about how they achieved what they did, plus their advice for dancers and teachers struggling during quarantine. We hope these videos can bring you inspiration. Enjoy. Today, we're interviewing World Champion Fiona Lee and her teacher, Heather Jolley. Thank you both so much for joining us. I want to start by talking about the situation we're in right now with coronavirus. Obviously, there aren't any competitions or events coming up, and we're seeing a lot of creative ways that teachers are keeping their students engaged. You both are teachers. What are you doing to keep students engaged with dancing?
I think there's so many good things online right now. One thing I've gotten into this last week is doing the old steps, which the kids are really enjoying. I think that was something new we hadn't done yet. All the challenges. There's this one with ScotDance actually. They've done patty bars, high cuts, shuffles. They've been busy with that. And then just movements really. Not as much dances at the moment, but.
We're also doing like next week, the Kaylee we usually have a dance demo in June in a theater. So this time, of course, we can't do that. So we're holding it online, and it's just going to be kind of a Kaylee, and people are going to demonstrate what they can do outside of Highland dancing. And for instance, somebody does sword fighting or something.
Yeah, we're going to have one that's doing sword fighting.
So she's going to demonstrate that and things like that, just to get everybody kind of talking to each other online, you know.
Fiona, how did you keep yourself motivated for practicing?
Well, I think I was kind of in a unique situation with, I don't know if a lot of people know we're related, actually. So my mom's mom and Heather's mom were sisters. So I was around her so much, and in lessons and with my dad, my brother, my mom. So there's always somebody there. And I think just as I got older, I got better at practicing and knowing what I had to do myself. So,
your dad also danced, Terry Lee, correct?
He did, yeah. I won a trophy with his name on it a few times.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Did he help you practice?
A runner-up at Cowell, actually. Yeah, he was a runner-up at Cowell, Terry. Yeah.
I believe, was Jack and Terry both competing?
Jack danced for a while, but he's kind of didn't have the same interest.
Very good. So what was that like, having a father that had danced at Cowell?
Oh, it was cool. And just with him being in the pipe band, going over to Scotland every summer, basically just became a normal thing for me, part of my everyday life. So
you went to Scotland every year from the time you were about 7, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So.
Did you find it really encouraging? I mean, your dad was a dancer, but also your whole family is so involved with the Scottish community. Did you find that really inspiring?
It's kind of hard because I didn't really know any different. Yeah, comparing it to somebody else who didn't have anybody else in their family doing it, I think that would be so different for me to think about, just because everybody, uncles, cousins, aunts, uncles, literally everybody was involved in some way, in some form, in the Highland Games. So that was cool.
It's a very unique situation. I mean, Fiona almost had she didn't have any choice, really.
Heather, what is a typical class, maybe when Fiona was competing at that Cowell level, what would a typical lesson look like?
Well, every teacher has a different philosophy on how they teach and what they do with their students. And in my case, I've taught hundreds of people, and some are going to be champions and some are not. And you have to cater to the whole class, of course. And even in the classes when Fiona was dancing, for example, there were a number of good dancers that were winners, champions too. And they didn't win the World Championship, but they were of that caliber. They could have won it. In fact, some of them were runner-ups and things like that. But you have to gear the class kind of to the average, you might say. So it's always a little bit of a challenge when you've got classes like that where there's top dancers and not bad dancers, but not as experienced and just not in it for the same reasons, you know. So a typical class, I would say, we certainly would go through the dances. My probable philosophy as far as teaching a class or a private lesson or whatever, I like to go through the dance and see what needs to be worked on, and then go through the steps one by one. And even in a normal class of the kind that Fiona might have been in, that's kind of what we did. So you have various levels, shall we say, of expertise, and you just deal with that. And in a class, you have to talk generally. For example, if you were working on the second step of the Highland Fling, the things that would apply to Fiona, sliding down the back of the leg on the back steps, for example, would probably apply to everybody in the class. So it's there, then it's up to the individual. They take from it what they can. And they either go home and practice it until they do it right, or they don't. And they come back again and they'll hear the same thing over and over, because the class probably isn't perfecting it the same way as Fiona might, or anybody else of that caliber, you know. That's basically about it. And then I'm always interested in I like to make people like Highland dancing. That's the biggest thing with me. Otherwise, I never would have been in it for over 60 years. You know, I want them to be passionate about Highland dancing and to like it. And maybe when they have children, send them into Highland dancing and whatnot. So I like a little fun in the class. And I've always tried to do, at the end of the class, either some choreography or a fun dance or whatever, anything to do, just do 15 minutes of fun, where Fiona enjoys that just as much as the other dancer who's just coming recreationally, you know.
So would you say for corrections, it was more you would give the corrections in the class and not spend a whole class working on it? You would tell them the correction, and then it was the dancer's job to go home and fix that and bring it back worked on.
Yeah, and I think that separates the sheep from the goats, you might say, because you know, you quickly realize who are the people that are passionate enough about it to go home and do it, and those that don't really care.
Everyone has their challenge. Fiona, what was your biggest thing that you felt like you had to work extra hard on?
I think just with some of the injuries I had a stress fracture, which took me out for probably close to a year, I would say, and then plantar fasciitis, which was about 6 months. Just coming back from those and working on elevation again took quite some time to get back. So I'd say that was probably the biggest thing.
Mono too, you had mono?
Yeah.
That's actually quite fun. You should tell them about the mono.
Yeah. The year I won Worlds, it was early May, like leading into our provincial championships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so sick. And the night after our provincials, I was in the hospital and they took the mono test. So I had that was probably almost 2 months leading into the August that I won Worlds. So yeah, coming back from that too, that was a lot of building back stamina. Mm-hmm. That took quite some time.
What was a typical practice like for you when you were competing at the Cowell level?
But I don't think there's ever really a set thing with Heather. It's always kind of different. So go in
the steps and things.
Yeah. So one day we'd do steps, one day we'd do the dances through, and then just through that, if there was anything she saw that she wanted me to work on, she'd tell me, and then we'd work on that for quite some time and move on to the next thing.
Did you ever do anything different, like working out at the gym or swimming to help build that stamina?
Yeah, so with the stress fracture and plantar fasciitis, I did quite a lot of swimming, and then I also had a personal trainer coming back from that because with the plantar fasciitis, I was a bit older at that time, so getting it back, the stamina took a bit longer, so the personal trainer definitely helped with that.
Heather, was there a moment that you realized Fiona had a good shot at winning Worlds?
Well, you know, again, we've been kind of talking about these sort of questions that you sent us, and that's a hard question for me because I've never really taught people to be world champions. I don't know how I can explain that to you, but my goal always in teaching, and I've been teaching for over 60 years, is I want them to be the best they can possibly be. You know, I train dancers to live up to their potential, put it that way. And amongst those dancers, there's going to be quite a few that are going to be regional champions, Canadian champions, Commonwealth or Worlds or whatever. There's going to be a group of them. I would have to say that any dancer that I teach that has potential, I'm teaching them to be a champion, not necessarily a world champion. And the reason I say that is because I've taught probably 12 dancers at least that I think could have won the world championships. And winning the world championships, as both of you know, and Fiona knows too, a lot of luck enters into the picture. You know, it's not always just about how hard you've trained or what you've done to get there. It's a lot of luck. And for example, with the two of you, for example, you had some luck because in the end, your injuries didn't really make any difference to your dancing at Cowell. So that was lucky, because it could have been disastrous, really. You could have both been sitting in the stands, you know, so you had some luck there. And luck plays a big part in winning the Worlds. And I could name you several dancers that I've taught that were first runner-up, second runner-up. You know, Terry, for example, Fiona's dad, he was a first runner-up. And so I'm never teaching with the aim of making you a world champion. I would like you to be a champion. And if you're lucky enough to win the world, so much the better, you know what I mean? But just focusing on winning the world championships, I've never really done that. So, you know, I taught Estelle Clues too, and she was a very natural dancer. She was a very, very good dancer and very natural. And so maybe we had aspirations of winning the worlds, but the biggest thing for her was to be the best she could be, because it wasn't even a gimme that she was going to be able to go to Cowell. That was also a factor with a lot of dancers, because they couldn't go every year like the dancers do now. They only went, you know, once or maybe even twice, and that was it. So if they were lucky enough to win, that was what it was all about. They were lucky enough to win. Like the cards were good that day, so to speak, you know.
Fiona, was there a moment for you that your goal became to win Worlds or to do well at Cowell, aside from just maybe in Canada doing well in championships?
Yeah, I think, again, that's a little bit different for me, just because I had been to Cowell every year from 7 till, I don't even know, into my 20s. So I was always seeing it and seeing what they were doing on stage, and obviously seeing Colleen win all those times. But so, I mean, it's something all dancers want to work towards, obviously, but when I was 15, I came second. So that was probably the first time I thought, oh, maybe. But yeah, I don't think I ever had that as a specific goal in mind. It was just kind of a cherry on top kind of thing.
Well, just to confirm what you're saying, I happened to be the president of ScotDance Canada or something the year that Fiona won. So I was sitting backstage, and Fiona got 4 firsts, and I'm not kidding you. I was like, Christine Lacey was sitting beside me, and she had to sort of punch me and tell me, "This is real, Heather. Aren't you excited? Don't you know?" And I was so unexpected that I did not know. I mean, I was shocked. So, you know, thinking to yourself, "Oh, she can win this." I mean, she had some really good dancers in her class, and I'm sure they were, you know, as shocked as we were. You know? So I couldn't really say that we were expecting it. No.
Yeah, no.
Fiona, what was that moment like for you?
Pretty surreal. I always laugh at my mom and also Heather's mom. Well, your mom was probably the funniest. After I got the 4 first, we went back to the stands, and I call her my Auntie Anna. I called her and she said, wait, I have to sit down. And she's like, say it again. So I said, oh, I got 4 first. And she said, oh my gosh, I could die now. That is what she said. And then my mom also sitting in the stands as all the results were coming out. It was first in the fling, first in the sword, and then I think she leaned over to whoever was sitting next to her, said, "Oh, can she lose it now?" After I got my first in the chanteuse, and I'm like, "No, she's won." Like, definitely surreal, like out of body moment, I would say.
Fiona, I loved watching you dance. I always thought that you were so strong. What did you do to work on high-kits? It's one thing that a lot of dancers struggle with. What did you do?
Yeah, I find with teaching, one thing a lot of people struggle with on high cuts is turnout, but I was kind of lucky with that because turnout was something really natural for me. So probably strength on high cuts, and then just Heather would have exercises to do, just like the out high cuts, leaps, like just getting the power off the floor, really. Yeah.
You know, high cuts are, everybody says, how can you improve your high cuts? And I think one of the things that people go a little haywire on is that they don't teach what I call an up high cut. They teach a down high cut. Like I like to teach it, and we do exercises that talk about the supporting foot. You know, it's the supporting leg you should be thinking about when you're doing high cuts, not the other leg. Because this leg, when you bring the foot off the floor and you lift your supporting leg, that gives the whole high cut an up look. Whereby if you think about it, as you've got your foot on your leg and you're going to kick it out to the side and then kick the other one out to the side, that's a down look. So I always like the dancers to practice going from one foot, thinking about lifting the supporting leg when they go to do a high cut. And then the other leg just goes out naturally. So we kind of do quite a bit of that, as well as a high cut out, just to get a nice straight leg. And the turnout, of course. But
Did you do anything besides full dances for stamina, or was your main way of building stamina doing all your dances through?
Growing up, I did a lot of ballet, so that I would say helped as well. With that, I was dancing close to every day between ballet and Highland, so that helped with stamina. And then just, I wouldn't say I did dances through at every single lesson, not all of them at least. So just a mixture of dances and steps and ballet, yeah.
Now that you're both, do you guys teach your classes together?
well, we're not doing any at all right now, so Fiona's
Well, not
doing
right
most
now,
of
but
normally, well, up until just last year, we were sort of sharing them, you know, but in the last year, you've done more than me. I've done private lessons and things like that more than the classes now. Fiona does most of the class.
She's always in on the class though, giving her 2 cents.
Oh, yeah. When I was teaching, my mother would come and watch what I was doing. And I used to get mad at her because she used to be always nattering about what I wasn't seeing, or didn't you see that so-and-so did such and such? And I'd just boil. And sometimes I catch myself doing the same thing with Fiona.
I was wondering what both of you find the most difficult thing to teach, especially to new dancers.
I say propel pivot turns. Once you tell someone to do something, propel pivot turn, and they try it and it looks nothing like what you had envisioned in your head, and then start from scratch, I find that takes the longest to teach. And I know you're different.
Well, I always remember Nancy Haggerty, and she was Jesse Sturt's daughter and a wonderful teacher. She once told me that the way she taught propel pivot turns was she teaches them, she doesn't even talk about the propel pivot turn, she just does the polka movement. Step together, step together, step together, step together, and eventually it becomes a propel pivot turn. And I think that's quite right. I don't necessarily do it that way because sometimes I forget to do it that way, to tell you the truth, and you start getting them to do the push thing. But in times when I have done the polka thing, it's an easy way to teach it because kids all know how to polka. So if they just polka around with their partner, eventually it becomes a push. And but I think back steps are the hardest thing to teach because there's so many factors involved, you know, the turnout, the sliding up and down the leg, keeping the working foot at the same level, you know, all those things are pretty difficult, and especially for beginners, really hard, really hard. It takes so much control to do a really good back step.
How much of your teaching style is like Heather's?
I would probably say that's where I got all my teaching style from, just because growing up I'd sit in all her classes and see how she taught and sometimes how her mom taught as well. And I think I've just kind of taken that and started teaching that way as well.
Absolutely. And you got your judges recently as well.
Yeah, it's definitely different, but I'm getting more used to it now, and it's fun to go to all the different places. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. I know it's very difficult to pass.
Yeah.
It is hard.
I was wondering what advice you guys would have for teachers that are just starting out.
Well, you started it recently, so you'd have more advice
I
than me.
know.
on that, right?
I guess I'd probably say don't sweat the small stuff. Like just look at the big picture. Things aren't going to happen overnight. So just give it time. Let the kids understand their corrections, work on them. So whether that takes 2 months, 3 months, maybe even a year sometimes, just let it have its own timeline.
I would have to say that in this day and age, because things have changed so much in the last, well, since the internet, as far as teaching dancing is concerned, it's totally different now. Not just that we do things on Zoom and things like that, but the whole parent thing. For example, parents are on the internet, they know the things about dancers in Scotland and whatnot, whereby 20 years ago, nobody knew anybody other than the people in their own little world, their bubble, you know. So I would say that one of the most difficult things for a young teacher starting out, or any teacher, whatever age, is knowing how to handle the parents. You know, you want to be kind and you want to include them, but you've got to know how to be both of those things without letting them interfere with what you're doing. Because, you know, it's like Sheila said on one of your interviews, or was it Sheila or who was it? Or it might have been Linda, I forget. There's a triangle, obviously. You want the teacher involved. You cannot, a dancer cannot become a champion anymore unless they have the backing of the parents. There's no question about that. However, a good teacher, I've always said, if you send your child to a teacher, you've chosen that teacher, let that teacher do the work. Let that teacher be the teacher. You've chosen them and you're paying them, so let them do the work. Don't have me say, now you should practice your hot brush beat beat, and then go home, and because their mother has seen somebody do really good high cuts, instead of practicing the hot brush beat beat, they practice the high cuts. You know, so you've got to have faith in your teacher, but on the other hand, the teacher has also got to be able to handle that and flip that in the early stages and say, look, I'm the teacher, you're paying me to be the teacher, and I'm the teacher. You're the support system, you know? And I think that's the hardest thing, because naturally a new teacher doesn't want to make an enemy of the parent, you know, you don't want that to happen. So that's difficult. That's hard to handle, you know, how to be nice and yet be firm.
Yeah, I agree, especially for young teachers, because I teach, but when you're younger, significantly younger than the parents, yeah. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do, because I know that,
that's right.
You know, I'm still quite young, so it's hard to find that balance for younger teachers starting out, because you do have to set those boundaries, but also you're not trying to be disrespectful.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's the hardest thing, I think. I really do.
Fiona, did you have a mentor growing up, or someone that you looked up to?
Probably as far as looking up to, just because I saw her so much at Cowell and Canadians and all that, would be Colleen Tamaki, I would say. Sitting next to her in the stands at Cowell and watching her dance being so effortless, I would say that was definitely somebody I looked up to.
I always thought Colleen was so good too, so it sort of rubbed off on.
Yeah.
If I had to say watch somebody, I would have said watch Colleen, you know? I mean,
yeah.
What was both of your fondest memories? Heather, as a teacher, you've been teaching for over 6 years, and Fiona as a dancer, but also as a teacher. So Heather, let's start with you.
Start with Fiona, I gotta think about it.
Fiona, let's start with you.
Fondest memory, I mean, of course, would be winning Cowell. That would be the top of the list. But then also going to Scotland, something I really enjoyed. We'd go over early in the month of August and go to all the little games up north. So that was so much fun. I loved doing that. It was very different from anything at home, between the pillow fights, the races, you name it, they had it. And as far as a teacher, I mean, just seeing students make their corrections, putting into action in a competition. Not always so much the results, but just seeing them do what we've been working so hard on. I like to see that.
Just an aside to Fiona's comments there about the little games in Scotland. That's something that I've actually tried to encourage people that I've taught that have gone to Scotland. is to go to some of the little games, because that's where the real fun and the atmosphere is and whatnot. And you know, that's where you enjoy your dancing, as opposed to when you get to Cow and you're like, because it's a whole different picture. At the little games, you really see the culture of Scotland, and you get to know what's going on, you know, and it's lots of fun, and nobody cares who wins because the judge could be the local dentist or something. You know, things like that. It's just a different atmosphere, and it's a lot of fun, which we don't often get these days, you know. So I would say that. I think as far as certainly Estelle and Fiona winning the world certainly has to be one of those up there things for me. I also have really had the good luck to really enjoy traveling a lot with the SFU pipe band, and the girls that I taught danced at Carnegie Hall and the Sydney Opera House, and you know, the Glasgow, whatever it's called over there, the concert hall, and
Glasgow concert hall,
Boston, and all sorts of places, you know. So there was no one highlight in that sort of atmosphere, but that was a lot of fun. And again, in those groups, there were a lot of pretty good dancers. There were champion dancers in those groups, but that was the other side of the competing thing. They did a lot of concert work with the pipe band. And I'm sure those are, funny as it may seem, those are probably the memories they have, as opposed to doing well at Cal or, you know, winning championships. I can think of quite a few girls that probably feel that way. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Did you ever compete at Braemar?
I didn't.
No,
I was just wondering when you mentioned the non-board, because that's non-board as well, and they give, after each dance, they give you your results and you go up with a flag. It's very different as well.
I have kind of a funny story. One summer we were at a Boyne doing the Boyne Highland Games, and they did the same thing. They did a flag after each dance, and I think the first dance was the fling, I guess, and we went up on the stage and I had my flag. I got, I don't know, third or something, but they announced that I was from Canada, and then after that I didn't get anything.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I think there was like 8 dances after.
That's the other thing, is that those little competitions.
Oh, I know. I learned my lesson there. You say it from like Stirling or Glasgow or something.
Well, it's not a bad experience for people to have, because you realize then that you have no control over the judges. That's where I say, as Emma was saying to you, for example, where luck enters into the picture. You know, I mean, when you go to Cal, you don't know what you're going to get in terms of what the judges are going to like. So you just better hope that they're going to like you, because they might like the dancer on the stage with you better, you know. So, and that's one of the things you learn at the little games. You know,
yeah.
The results could be anybody.
Do you have any other funny memories from dancing?
So it was Canadian Championships 2000, because it was the Millennium Sword Dance Challenge. I think I was 12 or something. And it was the first or second round, I believe, and I was doing the last of the sword, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't really feel very good. And I finished point, back step, close bow, threw up all over the stage, ran off, and I remember, oh, there's no chance of getting through to the next round. So they were cleaning the stage, cleaning the swords. My mom was running backstage, and the next day or something, they did a callback, and I made it through the next round. I was like, gotta get that bow in there. I finished the dance.
Good for you. Well, you finished the dance, so.
I did, yes.
That's really impressive that you waited until you had bowed.
I know. I don't know how. I did. Yeah.
Where was that, Canadians?
Middle of West Edmonton Mall. Which made it worse.
Yeah, because there's lots of spectators all around the rink watching.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
my gosh.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's a great embarrassing one. That's like the best one I've heard.
Oh, I know. I will never forget that one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I have a funny memory when Estelle Clues was dancing at Oban, which is non-board, Oban Highland Games. The dancers don't face the audience, they face the judges sideways. So if you're in the audience, you're watching the dancers sideways, not the head on. So Estelle was dancing, and it's a bit of a long story. I'm going to cut it short. But the judging panel, none of us knew the judges or anything, but there was quite an entourage in the judges' tent, a family actually, and several gentlemen and whatnot. So Estelle's dancing, and that's fine. And after the dance was finished, the man who looked like the head judge, he turned to the kids that were, I later learned they were his kids, and he was the local dentist. Okay, he turned to his kids and he said, so, Ailey, which dancer do you like best? And she said, I fancy the girl with the red hair. And of course, Estelle had red hair. We could hear all this going on. And she won. I mean, that's how
Oh
she
my
won.
gosh.
It had nothing to do with what she was doing. She happened to be a good dancer, but it could have just as easily been the other girl with the red hair. You know? So Estelle got first. Well, those sort of things happen. Mind you, that's quite a few years ago now. It doesn't happen anymore. But I mean, it goes to show you how you've got to be prepared for everything when you go over there, including bad weather. That's another thing about Cal. If you're lucky enough to be dancing on a good day, you're going to dance better than you're going to dance on the many rainy days.
Absolutely.
Normally, Cal has a good day, a bad day, an okay day, and then another bad day all in the first 3 hours.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hailed while I was doing my reel my first year, and I had never, because the only games I had done were outside in California. So I was like, they're not moving us inside. You want me to dance? There's hail coming out of the sky. So that wasn't my best reel.
Fiona, when you danced at Cowell, did you have heats and finals in the same day?
I don't think I ever had them in the same day. I don't think they had split it up at that point. I think we still had large class sizes, but I don't think they ever were at like the whatever 70 plus they're at now.
You probably did. You did them on the same day, I would imagine, Natalie, did you?
Yeah. So for juvenile and adults, we had heats in the morning, and then we did the World Championship in the afternoon.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, we were so I think now, just this past year, they separated it, right? The qualifying was on Thursday, the finals were on Saturday. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
now we have a day in between.
A day in
Yeah,
between.
I was always the Friday, Saturday.
Right.
Well, all the girls from your generations should consider themselves lucky, because I remember being at Cowell probably 1959 or 60, and they danced 8 steps in the fling, 4 and 2 in the chanteuse, and 6 and 2 in the chanteuse, and I think it was 4 and 1 in the swords.
I can't even imagine that.
And I remember, I know the dancers that danced in it, and they just went up on stage and danced. They never even thought about it. Yeah,
They didn't know.
They didn't know anything better. That's right.
Heather, you mentioned Estelle Clues. I remember dancing with her. She was a little bit older than me, but I remember her hike-ets. She could hike it for days, and they were so powerful. And I remember asking her one time, and she said she did 100 a day, every single day.
Wow.
That's something that, is that something that
Very
you
well, yeah.
heard?
No, Estelle was a very natural dancer. She had wonderful elevation. And her biggest problem was that she was such a natural dancer that sometimes it was a little bit of a chore to perfect things. She just danced beautifully right off the tilt, and she had beautiful feet, she had good turnout, she had everything, and it was hard. And besides that, she also had the guys. She was in the era of Gregor Bowman, Derek, and Gareth. She had to fight them, as did Jennifer Lindsay. They were the big competition, and it was pretty hard to go up against those 3 guys. Like, they were like first, second, and third right off the bat, and you were dancing for 4th because you were a girl. So
I remember competing against the boys also, and just keeping up with them. It was
pretty tough. Yeah, I mean, they're all good dancers. It wasn't like they weren't good dancers. They were guys, and they were good dancers, so it was hard. Yeah, I think Estelle actually probably could have won the Worlds at least once, maybe even twice more. But, the luck just wasn't with her that day. That's all there was to it. But she was very close on several occasions.
Did she win the Worlds?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she did. She won juvenile, is that right?
I think so. Yeah, she did. Junior. Yeah, same one.
I thought that.
Yeah. Oh, junior. Wait a minute. Might have been junior.
Oh, junior.
Yeah.
Fiona, do you
Yeah,
have
and
any advice for dancers that are struggling to stay motivated during this time?
oh.
Well, I find that our kids right now are super self-motivated because in normal times, there's so many activities right now. We have, I couldn't even name them all, basketball, soccer, volleyball, karate, swimming, whatever it is. And all those were off, so they literally didn't really have much else to do. So they've been probably practicing more now than they were before the pandemic. So I'm very impressed with that. They've kept going really well. So I haven't found that I have to actually motivate them too much because they're doing really, really well self-motivating. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising too.
Yeah. Yeah. Shows you how much they love to do it. So that's good.
That's great. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or add?
No, we were talking about teachers just a little while ago, and for beginner teachers and whatnot. There is something that I wouldn't mind saying that I feel some teachers, when they start out, they get a little bit discouraged because you're not going to have champions walking through your door every day. My mother used to say 1 in 50. So I think that there's lots of good teachers out there, but you're only as good as the talent that walks through your door. If the horses don't come through the door, you can't win the race. So, I think for young teachers, don't expect to be teaching a champion right off the tilt. It isn't going to happen. Or it could happen on the other hand. If you're lucky enough to have somebody fall in your lap, well, then, that's all the better. But it's not likely to happen. You're going to go through a struggle at first when you start to teach, because there's a lot of factors going into being a champion, and you're not likely going to be able to do that right away. But then some teachers get discouraged because if they were a champion themselves, and I know Fiona, she might not remember this, but when she was teaching herself at the beginning, I think she sort of thought, why can't they do that? I can do it. I can do it. Why can't they do it? Sort of thing. Did you have that feeling? Yeah. And it takes a little while to learn that just because you were able to do it doesn't mean to say that the people coming through your door are going to be able to do it. And not to get discouraged because that doesn't happen. Teach the kids that you have to be as good as they can be and be satisfied with that. Because again, to me, the proof of a good teacher to me is being able to bring somebody that has no talent at all up to being a pretty good dancer. That's more satisfaction, perhaps not more satisfaction, but an equal amount of satisfaction as teaching a champion. When you can go back and look at a kid that's danced for 8 or 10 years and you think, wow, they're really good, but I remember when they came, they were absolutely hopeless. That's a great deal of satisfaction in that, just as much probably as teaching somebody to win. So, if you want to be a teacher of Highland dancing or a teacher of anything, ballet or whatever, then I think you have to keep that in your mind. That sometimes the greater satisfaction is seeing a kid really, really improve.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Thank you both so much for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you both.
You too. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it too. It's been great.